Hey, what's up, NB fam? Today we're going out for a ride on the Dadercycle, which is my dad's 2010 Harley Davidson Road King Classic. This is a funny bike. He wanted a Road King his whole life. He always talked about it. We've had a million bikes between us. He had a Honda CB350 when I was growing up. It was a sweet little bike, man. I think it was like a late 60s, early 70s. It was red with like the black trim and gold pinstripes or whatever. That was a really cool bike. And then he went quite a while without a motorcycle, and I got really into them. I ended up buying a dirt bike, like an XR80, when I was 12 years old. And then he kind of got back into bikes around then. He bought a Yamaha Virago. I think it was like 1,000 cc's or 1,100. I think his was 1,000. It was just one of those first Japanese cruiser style bikes. I think his was like from the 80s. Maybe it was 87 or 88. And he rode that for a long time. You'll notice the Dadercycle is really dusty. This was the first year that I had that shed in the yard. And I find that first couple of years after you build something out of wood, you notice like there's just a thin veneer of dust over everything that sits in it. I did wash it off after this ride, but I wanted to catch the good weather. It was actually warm here today for the first time since we started making these videos. And I was out sort of doing chainsaw work in the backyard. I think I'll put together a non-bike video, just sort of addressing fitness and weight loss and that kind of thing. And I hope that's okay. You know, this channel's about really a couple different things. And when the winter comes along, right, I'd like to still be making videos. I have an interest in cars. I have lots of interest, really. So I don't want to kind of stop making videos at that time. Especially my weight loss journey is so damn slow that I feel like it's going to take at least until winter to even get to my goal. Anyway, yeah, back to this bike. So Dad had the Virago 1000. I never really fell in love with it. I took my driver's test on it when I was 16. It was kind of like a chopper style bike. It was hard to maneuver. And if you remember doing your driver's test, those cones being 10 feet apart on a raked and stretched Yamaha Virago, you can imagine that was a little bit challenging, but I did get through it. It didn't have much in terms of power. It couldn't have had, I would guess maybe 40 or 50 horsepower, and it was really smooth. It was a kind of a comfortable bike. But he always wanted the Road King. We just, Harleys are expensive, and he had a family, and he put me through college my first couple of years. Like, I don't think I took a student loan until I started medical school. So he, mom and dad kind of helped me out that way. I had some scholarships as well, which was helpful, but if I hadn't, I think they still would have tried to help me however they could. Anyway, I'm going on about that. I could go talk about them forever, but so the Virago saw him through to I think it was like 2010. I bought a Suzuki Madura 1200, which might be the ugliest motorcycle ever made. It had this huge radiator. It was a big V4. I think it was the opposite of Dad's bike. It made something like 120 horsepower. It was really tall bike. Like, I could flat foot it, but I'm 6'2", and it was really weirdly designed. It had that big radiator in front, and the wind would really push you around on the highway. But that thing was nuts. It would now, I talked earlier about not being able to wheelie, but that thing could like power wheelie as you were accelerating onto the highway. It was a strange bike. So he and I rode around on those two bikes for a long time. And then I don't know exactly what happened. We put them into storage for a while. I think I had gone off I went to medical school in Newfoundland. That is what happened. Yep. I went to medical school in Newfoundland. I didn't bring a bike. You had to go across on the ferry. So I brought basically, for 4 years, I lived out of a suitcase. And I brought initially a Honda Accord, our 1996 Honda Accord, my first year. And the second year, I made it about 1 kilometer from our house on my way back to school. And the entire radiator unspooled on the road behind me. I saw this big streamer kind of chasing the car, and I thought, well, that can't be good. And sure enough, it was the radiator unspooling. So that year I limped the car back home, and Dad gave me his Jeep. He had a 91 Jeep Cherokee, and I took that to Newfoundland. I feel like I'm just a chatterbox here, but I'll kind of explain why I'm doing these this way in a bit. Anyway, I took that truck to Newfoundland, and it was awesome. I liked having the truck. I liked having the 4-wheel drive. It would go over anything. It was good in the snow, but it wasn't particularly rust-proof. And one morning, I was on my way to go do rounds. I was on general surgery. I was like the medical student on the general surgery team. And on the way to the hospital, it was like 6 a.m. I went through this big slushy puddle, and all the slush went up my pant leg, and I looked down, and there was a hole about the size of a softball just beside my heel in the floor. So I kept driving that car, and then the top of the gas tank rusted out, and so you couldn't fill the car or take a sharp corner, or it would dump all its gas on the road. And then shortly after that, one of the tires kept deflating. The wheel, like where the tire gets beaded onto the wheel, had rusted through, and so it would hold pressure for about a day. So I did fill up the tire every morning on the way to the hospital for a while, and then I just took the license plates off it and abandoned it in the hospital parking lot, and borrowed my friend Chris's Chevy Cavalier. And while I was driving his car, the gas tank rusted out. I poured about $100 worth of gas on the ground. They talk about situational awareness for bikers. I'm maybe not brilliant. Up here a little ways, you're going to see some deer. I was talking yesterday about driving in New Brunswick and riding, and I'm still really interested in getting this Kawasaki ZX14R. My wife is horrified that I'd get another motorcycle because you can only drive one at once and whatnot. But she just doesn't understand. She probably never know if I just sort of sneakily bought it and put it in the garage. She'd just think it was one of the other ones. But one of the things I was saying about it, I know that I'll drive fairly responsibly because there's so much wildlife in New Brunswick that you really, and look at the state of the roads, good God. You really can't test anything at its top speed safely, because eventually a deer is going to walk in front of you. You always need to have more brakes than you have speed, if that makes sense. You always need to be able to stop in a short period of time. I've had some really close calls with deer, especially at evening, sunset time. The closest call I've had was going into the hospital in my truck, and I wasn't even driving that fast, but I think it was just I was tired. It was like 2 a.m, and we were going in, I think, for a stroke case, and I was just thinking through all the steps I had to do, and maybe a little bit distracted, and I missed I saw it at the very last second, and I must have missed it by a fraction of a centimeter. My wife Chrissy hit a moose one day driving a Hyundai Accent from St. John to St. Stephen into I think it was foggy, but I think she was also driving into the sunset. She was a little bit blinded. She never saw it, never tapped the brakes, just instant collision. Now here we're on, I believe this is Model Farm Road. Might be Meanan's Cove Road, but they actually call it Mean's Cove, but it's spelled Meanan's, so I've been trying to say it better. You'll see it's it's a really pretty area. New Brunswick has some incredible scenery, but the state of the tarmac is absolutely horrendous. Now, I did find these videos are a little bit choppy, and it's almost like I rewatched my other one from the other day, and it's almost like watching ASMR. It kind of puts you to sleep. So I more listen to the story time, because I remember the ride. But yeah, so to get rid of some of that choppiness, I did look at the new GoPros, and I have ordered a GoPro Hero 8. Because of the pandemic, of course, everything's on, like, you never know when it's going to show up, kind of deal. But I'm heading back to work next week anyway, so I won't be able to film a lot of ride-along videos. But in the meantime, the 2 is fine. It's just the footage is bumpy, and there's so much compression. Oh, there's the deer, just off to the left. There's so much compression that I find you lose a lot of detail. Like, you also don't get great color grading. I don't do a lot of video stuff, but that is one thing that I have noticed, is the color grading is quite poor. It's kind of washed out looking, and I think it gets better the further generations you go with the GoPros, according to the YouTube reviews I've been reading anyway. Anyway, yeah, so the Kennebecasis River is on our left on this drive, on this part of the drive, and you kind of get glimpses of the water through the trees and stuff. I was worried the windshield would give us a lot of artifact, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's not too bad. You kind of get that a little bit of lensing, I guess you'd call it, but it's not terrible. One thing I've noticed with this bike, well, there are a few things. So with that windshield, the wind catches me on the highway. It catches me right on the sort of mid part of the helmet. And if you hit the wrong speed, you kind of get this resonant frequency, and the helmet vibrates on my head, and I feel like my eyes go blurry. I don't know if anyone's ever had that experience. So I was watching some videos by a guy who goes by Shade Tree Surgeon, and he's got a little extra windshield clipped on top of his windshield. I'm wondering if maybe that's the answer, maybe to get a little extra piece just to go up top and sort of deflect a little bit of extra wind. The other thing is that Dad had a Batwing. He bought a Batwing for this bike, and I guess it was kind of lucky that he's got the black bike, and it's just like there's no sparkle in the black paint. It's just like a flat black color. But the windshield on the Batwing's lower, but the problem's even worse when I ride it with the Batwing. So I've just been riding it with this the standard Road King windshield. I think it looks cool. Plus, I kind of like seeing those chrome headlights in front of you on this one. This bike always kind of reminded me of a fire truck for some reason. I think it's just there's so much chrome on it. It's so big, and the light bar is so big. It's not a very quick bike. I mean, I've got it's got a stage 1 on it with the Rinehart Racing exhaust, and it certainly gives it a lot of low end torque. But man, the power in the upper end, it's not really enough for the weight of the bike. And I think the brakes, I mean, it's got dual disc brakes out front. There might be a little bit of a warp to them. They don't feel great, and it doesn't slow down real fast. I feel like the Super Glide Custom, if you want to go out and ride quickly, is the better bike. This bike is very comfortable, though. One thing I would do, I'd probably put in a 1-inch riser on the handlebars, just where I'm so big, I feel like I'm riding on top of it instead of riding in it. You see in some places here across the center line, it's not because I'm taking the corner too fast. It's that I'm just looking for the part of the road that's going to punish my testicles the least. It is a really pretty ride, looking at it now. But unfortunately, it was one of those days. The roads are so bad that I was spending a little bit more time sort of looking at the road, trying to guess where to go, and I didn't really take in the scenery as much, which kind of is a good argument for making these videos, since I don't really have to pay any attention when I'm watching it on here. It's kind of nice. What else? Oh, this is a horse farm on the left. I'm actually coming back out towards the old highway that we took the other day on the Super Glide Custom. This was my dad's favorite ride, and this is his favorite road coming up, although it's beat to crap right now. And when he was sick, he already knew he had pancreatic cancer, but it was before he got too weak to ride. He rode that first summer and fall all the time, like he was always on his bike. But he made me come out here with him, and you'll see just around the corner, like you get a good view of the river. The road's bad here, and then it opens up and it gets like there's a nice patch of asphalt right here. He made me stand on that corner with my phone and take videos of him riding past the river around here. He said this was his favorite piece of road in the world. So I thought I'd head back that way, and it is a wicked little stretch. I love that. And so this river on your left now is part of I think this is still the Kennebecasis actually, but the Hammond River is in front of us, which is like a big tributary. When we come to the end here, there's a little church, and there's actually a really good Polish restaurant right on this corner. We're still, I think, technically in Quispamsis here. I think that's the restaurant right in front of us. I don't know if anybody's ever interested in coming up to New Brunswick or going for a ride. We're in southeast New Brunswick, so you'd probably base where you're staying around Quispamsis or St. John. You can always send me a note if you want to go for a ride, and I'll sort of take you around my favorite spots. The roads are kind of craptacular, I will admit. I was going to boost the volume a little bit here just so you could hear the bike accelerate, but I listened to it and you just hear mostly wind noise. If you didn't see the last video, I was having issues, so I've got a chest harness with a GoPro Hero 2, and that's what I'm riding with. But the chest harness is like one of those waterproof cases, and the front of the lens cover was all scratched up, so I had to it's like riveted in. I actually took the rivets out of it and removed it, and then put the ring that holds the lens cover in back on it, and that's sort of how it's set up for this video. I figure if the lens gets cracked, I'll just wait until the Hero 8 shows up and keep doing video. But Jack wants to record some video for of himself doing some dirt bike stuff, so tomorrow our plan is to head up to Shediac, New Brunswick. I'm off work, obviously. We'll head up to Shediac, and then we'll try and get some GoPro footage of dirt bikes. I've got a DRZ 400 there. So Kennebecasis is on our left here, and we're going up towards Hampton. This is kind of I think we went the opposite way the other day when we were riding the Super Glide Custom. I think we did this part of the trip. I think I'm doing it in reverse now. This Ultramar station on the right just went out of business after 50 years. And that's where we used to get our fishing licenses. I blame COVID-19 as well as a little bit of government incompetence where they've gone after the small businesses in Canada. Anyway, that's a whole other kettle of fish. This is a really pretty ride, and actually sometime we'll do the same ride, maybe when I get the Kawasaki back, and I will continue on. We'll go over to the Kingston Peninsula. We haven't had many COVID cases in New Brunswick lately. I think we're almost 10 days without one. There might be a new one today, though. I'm not 100% sure. But if it stays like that, say you get the 14 days with the borders closed, I mean, I can't imagine there'd be any real downside to sort of riding further distances. They should open up the ferries and stuff. They may even be open now. And so the Kingston Peninsula, if you look across the river, it's that landmass over on our left. I am hoping that the narration is recording. I did have some issues with it earlier. This guy's funny. I thought about just cutting the video and not making you guys watch me sit at a traffic stop, but I'm lazy. This guy's got a great ZZ Top beard. I don't know. Unfortunately, with the GoPro with the wide angle, it might go by too fast when he turns the sign. But I always see him. He's always doing road work stuff every summer. Check out this dude's beard. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Low def. I don't know, when I'm watching this, I see kind of these streaky lines across the blue sky. I think that's part of the compression algorithm. But I don't know if maybe that's just because I'm using Premiere Pro to edit. And it may just be the way it compresses it when I'm watching it here. Anyway, this bike with the Stage 1, man, it gets super hot. I don't know if that's... I've read on the forums that the 96 cubic inch engines do get hot, but it's almost like the headers are really hot. I washed it afterwards, and I let it sit for 20 minutes, 30 minutes after riding it. And then I put the hose to it. I like to let things cool down a little bit. As soon as I sprinkled the hose on it, you just heard like snapping and popping and like this big cloud of steam, and it kept going. I kept water on it, and it kept doing that. I don't know if that was stupid of me. Speaking of stupid things I've done with motorcycles, man, you'll notice at most of the end of most of my rides, I do tend to fill up with gas, and that's because with the CB750 one year, I put it away with half a tank of gas in it, and the whole inside of the tank rusted out. It's life isn't easy when you're dumb, and I do a lot of dumb things. The CB750, by the way, so I went out to Eldridge's. I took the ZRX back to get the rear tire on. I don't know why I took it to the Harley dealership. That was stupid of me. It's going to cost way more money, and I don't know what's wrong with me. Sometimes I make stupid decisions. They were open, and I'm friends with the guy who runs the service department, Steve. I think that's I think that was the logic behind it. There is a Kawasaki store in St. John. That's probably who I should have called, but nope. And anyway, I was talking to them about the CB750. It's there too, but they are the Honda dealership. I was hoping they would just be able to find aftermarket parts. It needs a fuel petcock. It was leaking fuel, and there was a couple drips of oil on the garage floor after taking it out of storage. And man, I was so disappointed. I went to bring in the other bike, and they said, "Yeah, we can't actually fix the oil leak." So, what do you mean? Well, it's going to be massive. We're going to have to do a big tear down to get to the gasket. So I think my plan. I do know a guy, Mike Milligan. He owns Milligan Cycle in Shediac, New Brunswick. I'm going to show it to him and see if he's interested in it. There's another fella named Ray in Shediac who's into old cars and old bikes. He might be interested. I don't know what to ask for 1978 CB750 with the slow oil leak. Everything else works. It's not fast. Like it doesn't. It probably could have the carbs cleaned or jetted. If you were taking it apart, you'd probably be able to get it working a little bit better. But yeah, what do you ask for a bike like that? It's also kind of ratty looking. The paint is, I think, 5 layers deep. I bought it from a guy who was arrested a month later for being a meth dealer, I believe, in Halifax. But it is kind of a cool bike, I love those old bikes. I worry, I don't want to do it a disservice and either stupidly run it out of oil or let oil, if the oil drip gets worse, kind of let it go and then it needs more repair, you know what I mean? I've already put so much money into it. Yeah, it's one of those things. I should talk about the weight and the fitness journey a little bit. I've been walking twice a day while I'm on vacation, and so each walk I do about 55 minutes, and that's pretty much all I'm doing for exercise. I do weights when it rains, so if I'm in the home gym, I'll lift weights, and if it, if not, then I don't. I just walk. But the diet part is the hard part, I find. I was doing really well yesterday. Like, I had a day with no snacking, no junk food, and then I ended up at my mom's house late at night, and she had cookies. She made cookies, and so I ate some of those. And there was something else I ate too. Oh, she had potato chips out. I had a few chips. It's hard, man. It's I used to have better discipline. I also used to have better metabolism, so you get motivated easier. You'd start a diet and you'd lose like 20 pounds in the first week, and then you'd be like, oh yeah, this no problem, and then you could lose another 20 over the next few months because you were motivated. But now I find like I lost 6 pounds, and then you slip up even a little bit and you're up like 3 of them, and then it's hard to stay motivated. One reason that I need motivation is that my motorcycle clothes are expensive and they hardly fit. Like, that jacket I'm wearing is a Scott jacket, and I really, really like it. It's got great pockets. it's really nice leather. It's really comfortable. It's got really good padding in it. But man, if it doesn't fit, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do. So I gotta lose. I mean, I really have to lose 40 pounds at least. But even if I can lose another 5, just to get that motivation, you know what I mean? I kind of lost track of where I am here. I think this is the Hammond River Road that we just turned onto, and we came the opposite direction up this road the other day. This was a good ride. I mean, it wasn't warm, but it's like 11 degrees Celsius. So it's comfortable with your leather jacket on and gloves. Those Roland Sands gloves, by the way, I really like those. I like the design a lot. I don't know how much protection they give you compared to just a pair of leather gloves. But they do have one problem, and that's that they're white, and when you hit hornets, they explode with bright yellow intestines and stuff everywhere, and they're pretty disgusting looking now, but they're really comfortable. They're my most comfortable biking clothes. I could feel the bike getting hot at this point. It doesn't feel dangerously hot when you're riding it. Like, the performance doesn't suffer, but then I kept thinking, geez, my right leg feels really warm. And last year, it's got a battery tender on it. Last year, I smelled something when I was at a stoplight, and I looked down. The battery tender lead had melted to the crankcase. So I ended up zip tying it up, but it gets so hot. Even after I zip tied it up, I drove it home one day last fall and just went to plug in. I wasn't thinking. Went to plug in the battery tender, and burnt my finger and my thumb. The plastic was like malleable, and you could feel how hot the metal underneath was. It's amazing I haven't started a fire. The CB750, when I was trying to get it to start, I keep everything on tenders over the winter. I didn't think about it. I left it plugged in and went to start it, and a whole bunch of smoke came out of the negative battery lead. One of those things you just, I guess, unplug it before you try and start it. Because it wasn't like a jumper cable, it was just like the trickle charger, you know what I mean? It's kind of cool. I like the GoPro footage driving into the sun. I thought it would just be a whiteout, but it looks neat. It kind of looks like a meteor or something with that streak artifact. Yeah, this was a pretty ride. That bike looks so damn good from where you sit on it. Again, I love these. I love the Harleys in the same way. I think I was saying it yesterday. In the same way I love classic cars. I really like mid-50s cars. I don't know what it is. They put so much into the design. I think it was that the engines couldn't produce as much power maybe as like a wind tunnel would be required. Your air resistance was not a consideration in the 56 Bel Air, but it is one of my favorite looking cars. And I like Harleys the same way. They're not fast. They're not, they're fun. They're fast enough. They're certainly faster than like a 250 or a 450 or whatever. But they're just fun to ride. I don't know what it is. I think there's that weird feeling where you're kind of riding something that's not designed to slip through the air, and it still surprises you that you're able to corner as well as you can. You'll see here, I slow down a lot around the corners here. It's just because there's so much dirt on the road, and with the sun in my eyes, I was worried about potentially hitting an animal or somebody coming out, crossing the center line if I couldn't see them, that kind of thing. I'm not a real fast rider by any means. I'm pretty careful. I see a lot of trauma as part of my job. I do see some motorcycle trauma. That's something that's kind of interesting to talk about, actually. It's not, I don't see as much alcohol related motorcycle trauma as you would think. Most of the cases that come in to us, I'd say a lot of them are just traffic related. People getting hit from behind. They're not major traumas. The major traumas we get are people driving a little too fast, I think, and then a car doesn't see them and comes out, or a car assumes they're going to take longer to get there and pulls out and they get T-boned. It's usually a motorcycle versus car, I think. I think the roads are so bad that everyone knows you have to kind of corner slowly. And everybody's dumped their bikes here, but you usually do it at a low speed. The traumas seem to be mostly cars or places where you cross the highway and somebody doesn't look. I saw a thing, there's a paper published that says loud pipes don't save lives, and they did a statistical analysis. But I can say from experience that blipping your throttle when you don't want to honk your horn, I feel like honking is a bit rude, and you never really know what a driver's thinking. But when you're coming up to an intersection and there's a chance a car might pull out in front of you, I blip the throttle a bit on, especially on the Harleys, and people look and they see you. So I don't think, anecdotally, my experience does not agree with the findings of that paper. This bike, our friend Bob died in a motorcycle accident. I was kind of telling the Virago story, Dad's bike history. He had 1 million before that, but we had been riding together, and then I went to Newfoundland, and then I went to Halifax, and I actually had the CB750. I bought that in Halifax, and we rode again all through Nova Scotia a couple of times, up around Economy, Five Islands, Pugwash, Wentworth, kind of that area. And I think Dad still had the Virago. Yes. Yeah, that's right. I think that's what he was riding at that time. And our friend Bob died in a motorcycle accident. I think he had a Kawasaki Concourse, which is kind of the bike that I'm looking at getting. Just saw an interesting example of somebody kind of looking at the river. I was looking at the scenery and drove the wrong way. Almost into the side of the bridge, but I only looked for 1 second. Anyway, Bob hit a car. I think he was going pretty fast, and it was a sad case. But Dad sold his bike after that, and then I kept the CB750, but we went about a year without riding after Bob died, and then I said, I came home and I just said, I gotta get a bike, Dad. I bought myself a Harley. It was my first big purchase as a doctor when I came back. I got mine. It was 9,000 Canadian, and it was used. It was a 2009 Super Glide Custom. I got it from Quebec, and it already had the stage 1 and stuff, and I just loved the colors. I bought it sight unseen, had them ship it here. But then a year after I got mine, Dad wanted this one. He loves the Road King, and he'd been a little bit more successful. He owned his own business, and so he picked up the Road King. We rented one and did a ride, and he loved it. We went out to Evandale, which is a ride I'll do sometime and record. And he enjoyed it so much that he waited until the end of the season and bought, I think this one was a demo from Eldridge's. I think it was a dealership demo. And we had quite a bit of fun riding together. I loved riding with him. Kind of riding with a GoPro is, in a way, the first time I've ever felt like I was riding with company since Dad died. We just went, like, we always rode together. I did a few rides on my own, but mostly with him. Anyway, he went to test drive this bike, and I wasn't sure if it had anti-lock brakes. Now, the way to find out is to see if it's written on the brakes, if it says anti-lock brakes. But stupidly, not realizing this is another 200 pounds heavier than my bike, I said, well, we'll just drive it and then hit the brakes really hard. So I kind of took it down the road, going about 40, and then slammed on the brakes and locked the front tire and dropped the bike before I even bought it. Then I had to I decided to contribute to the purchase. I think I gave him a few $1,000s towards it, or he wouldn't take it, so I called the store and gave them my credit card. Neither one of us are super wealthy, but it just felt like the right thing to do since I dropped the bike before he ever got to ride it. It's so funny. Here it is accelerating. I wish you could hear it a little bit better. Maybe if I get a helmet mic. At least with the GoPro setup this way, you can kind of see the speedometer and stuff. Well, it is a pretty bike from this angle. I don't know what you call those handlebars. I don't know. They're not really, I guess, buckhorns maybe. Mini apes. I'm not sure. They're comfortable, but they should be, like, I can feel in my neck now. This was about, a 41-minute ride. And they just need to be up about an inch. But it won't look as good on risers. It doesn't matter. You got to be comfortable. Function over form. Anyway, I'm going to get on the highway here. And then I just go in for gas. So I'll say goodbye now, and we'll let the video play out. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye bye.